I saw him today, my sister Jessica said, voice low but sharp, as if the words themselves might shatter something fragile in the room. I froze mid-sip of my coffee, the quiet cafe around us fading into background noise. Who? I asked, heart suddenly heavier. Mark, your Mark with her. Jessica didn't need to say more. The shock hit me harder than I expected. Mark, my husband for 15 years, standing there like a stranger, arm around a woman who couldn't have been more than half my age. I stared out the window, watching raindrops race down the glass, each one a reminder of the storm inside me. For years, I had built our life carefully. I'm Elaine Carter, a 43-year-old architect, meticulous in my designs and in my life. Everyone at work called me unshakable. I prided myself on that, but today I was shattered. The cafe's warm light felt suffocating, as if the world was closing in around me. I felt the coldness creep under my skin, and yet I couldn't look away from Jessica's worried eyes. You're still holding on to hope, aren't you? Jessica's voice was a mixture of pity and frustration. I saw them laughing, touching, he doesn't even try to hide it. I swallowed, fighting to keep my voice steady. I know, but he's been acting distant for months. I thought it was stress at work. Maybe an affair, but not like this. Jessica's phone buzzed, she glanced down and frowned. It's Mom, she wants to talk, said it's urgent. My mother's calls usually meant family drama, but this time I had a feeling it was something else. I nodded, signaling Jessica to answer. I sat back, letting the moment wash over me, the smell of espresso, the chatter of strangers, the muffled clatter of cups. Nothing could soften the blow. At home later that evening, the silence was oppressive. Mark's side of the bed was cold, untouched. The house echoed with absence. My phone vibrated, a text from my best friend Lisa. Are you okay? Heard something today, call me. I typed back, not really. I need to breathe first. It was the first real crack in the perfect facade I'd maintained. At work, I was the dependable one, the woman with the sharp mind and steady hands. I led projects, solved crises, and earned respect. But here, in my own home, I was blindsided by betrayal. And betrayal from the one person I trusted most. The next morning, I found myself sitting across from Mark at breakfast, pretending I didn't know. His eyes avoided mine, a telltale sign I was no longer invisible. Busy day ahead, I said, forcing casualness. He mumbled something, distracted. I reached across, touched his hand lightly. The warmth I once found comforting now felt foreign. Mark, I said carefully, is there something you want to tell me? His silence was louder than any confession. Later, I overheard him on the phone in the garage. No, Sarah, I'm not coming home tonight. I'll see you at the hotel. The name hit me like a punch. That night, I locked myself in the study, the dim light flickering over blueprints scattered across the desk. My fingers trembled, but my mind sharpened. I wasn't going to crumble, not now, not ever. I thought about every moment that led here, the smiles, the promises, the shared dreams that now felt like lies. Why her? I whispered to the empty room. Why now? The question lingered in the air, heavy and unyielding. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jessica. You're not alone. We'll get through this. Her words were a lifeline in the dark sea of my doubts. I looked at my reflection in the window. The woman staring back was tired, yes, but beneath that there was fire, quiet, relentless. Mark had left me for someone younger, someone prettier, someone who thought she could take what was mine. But I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Could I turn this pain into power? Could I make him regret every gray hair he earned on my watch? The answer was in me, simmering just beneath the surface. And so began the day everything changed. The moment I discovered the name Sarah, my world narrowed into a single, sharp point. Sarah, the younger woman, the intruder in my life. I needed to understand who she was, what she represented, and why Mark had thrown away everything we built for her. That evening, I called Lisa. She was my rock, always ready with a sharp observation or a shoulder to lean on. Lisa, I said quietly, I need to know everything. Who is Sarah? Lisa sighed. Elaine, I heard from my cousin. Sarah's the assistant at one of Mark's clients, a 26-year-old with big ambitions. She's been cozying up to him for months, not exactly subtle about it either. I clenched the phone tighter, and Mark. He didn't just fall into it, did he? No, it's deliberate. The late-night calls, secret meetings, he's been lying for months. Hearing it out loud stung like acid. The man I married wasn't just unfaithful, he was careless and cruel. The next day I met with my colleague and friend, Raj. We were in the midst of preparing a major project for the firm, but I needed a break from blueprints and deadlines. Raj, I said, I have to tell you something. It's personal. He gave me a concerned look. Anything, Elaine. I hesitated but then spilled the truth. Mark is cheating with a woman half my age. Raj's brow furrowed. That's rough, but you're strong. You've built yourself from the ground up. Don't let him drag you down. His words warmed me, but the sting was still fresh. I'm not planning to let him. I'm planning to make him regret it. Raj chuckled. That's the spirit. What's the plan? I shook my head, more to myself than him. Not yet, but I'm gathering pieces. I need proof, something undeniable. That afternoon, I confronted Mark at the office parking lot. It was unplanned. I saw him talking to Sarah by his car, their laughter too easy, too intimate. Mark straightened when he saw me. Elaine, he said, eyes flickering with guilt and something else, maybe fear. Why, Mark? My voice was calm but carried the weight of 1,000 questions. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. It just happened. Just happened, I echoed. Is that what you call it? Throwing away 15 years for a whim. Sarah stepped forward, flashing a smile that made my blood boil. Elaine, right? I'm sorry, but Mark and I are happy. I didn't flinch. Happy at whose expense, Sarah? She shrugged, unapologetic. Life moves on. Mark looked between us, caught in the middle of the storm he created. Elaine, can we talk? No, Mark, we're done pretending. I turned and walked away, the cold air biting at my skin. Later that night, I sat with Jessica and Lisa at my apartment. The small living room felt cramped but alive with whispered plans and fierce determination. Jessica leaned in. You remember how Mom warned you about him? Said he wasn't the man you thought he was. I nodded slowly. Yeah, she was right, but this betrayal, it's bigger than I imagined. Lisa sipped her wine, eyes sharp. Mark's arrogance is his weakness. He thinks he can replace you with someone younger, prettier, but he underestimates how much you have. Jessica smiled, a mix of sisterly pride and defiance. We've got your back, this isn't just your fight. Their support grounded me. I realized revenge wasn't just about Mark. It was about reclaiming my power. Days turned into weeks. I started watching quietly, gathering scraps of information, secret meetings, careless text messages, subtle slips that revealed more than Mark intended. One afternoon, Raj handed me a folder with recent emails from Mark's company account. I think you'll find these interesting. I scanned the documents, evidence of misuse of company funds, unauthorized approvals linked to Sarah's firm. The pieces were coming together. One evening, as I sat alone, Mark called. Elaine, can we try to fix this? I laughed softly, bitter but controlled. Fix it? You think a few words can erase the damage? His voice dropped. I made a mistake. No, Mark, you made a choice, and I'm going to make sure you regret it. That night, I laid out my plan in the quiet glow of the desk lamp. It wasn't about revenge born from anger but calculated strategy. I wasn't a victim, I was a storm gathering strength. Jessica texted, ready when you are. Lisa's message popped up, you've got this, show him the woman he lost. And so the fire within me grew brighter, fueled by betrayal but sharpened by resolve. The question was no longer if I would strike back, but when, and how devastating the blow would be. The night before everything was set to unfold, I sat alone in my study, the only light coming from the desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, the city's hum faded to a dull roar in the distance, but inside, my mind was a storm of thoughts, plans, and quiet determination. I traced my finger along the edge of a blueprint for a new community center, my current project at work, trying to anchor myself to something tangible and familiar. Architecture was my sanctuary, the one thing I could trust to be straightforward, unlike the chaos Mark had thrust into my life. Yet even here I could feel his shadow creeping in. A soft knock broke my concentration. Jessica entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. You need a break, she said softly, sitting down beside me. I smiled faintly, grateful. Thanks, Jess, it's hard to keep everything together. She handed me a mug and studied my face. You've come so far already. Remember when you told me that if he thought he could break you, he was wrong. I meant it then, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. I just didn't realize how deep the wound would be. Jessica's voice was steady, full of quiet conviction. It's not just about the pain anymore, it's about what comes next. What you're going to do. Her words reminded me of a moment months ago, a flashback that played in my mind again and again. I was at a board meeting, presenting one of my designs when Mark had called me on my cell. His voice was distant, distracted. Elaine, we need to talk. I had sensed something was wrong, but I was in the middle of the presentation. I excused myself, stepping out into the hall and listened as he spoke about needing space and finding himself. It was the moment the first crack appeared, but I held on to hope. I hadn't yet seen the full picture. Now that hope had turned to steel. I looked at Jessica. I've been quietly collecting everything I could: emails, financial reports, pictures. Evidence that he thinks I'm too blind or weak to find. Jessica nodded approvingly. Good, you're not just preparing to fight, you're preparing to win. The next morning, I called Lisa, who was always my sounding board for the trickier parts of this plan. Elaine, are you sure you want to do this? Lisa asked, concern threading her voice. Going head-to-head with Mark won't be easy. I could hear the weight of her worry. Lisa had seen me at my best and worst. I don't have a choice. He took everything from me. Okay, she said firmly. Then I'll help you. I know a private investigator who can get us solid proof of his double life, and I'll gather whatever I can on his business dealings. Her support felt like armor. By midweek, the pieces were starting to fall into place. The private investigator had sent over photos, Mark and Sarah at a secluded cafe, his phone screen glowing with text messages that made no attempt to hide their intimacy. More importantly, Lisa had uncovered irregularities in Mark's business expenses that lined up suspiciously with the dates he claimed to be working late. After watching this video, may your heart feel at ease and revenge be fun without exhaustion. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep our spirits bright together. One evening, Raj stopped by my apartment after work. He brought along his laptop and a mountain of legal documents. Elaine, this is more than just a messy divorce, Raj said, eyes scanning the screen. If we prove financial misconduct, it's going to get ugly for him. I looked at the screen, a file full of Mark's questionable transactions glaring back. I want everything. His lies, his betrayal, his greed. Raj nodded, admiration clear. You're ready for this. That night, alone again, I allowed myself a rare moment of vulnerability. I thought about the years spent planning a future with Mark, the vacations, the quiet Sunday mornings, the late-night talks about dreams and fears. Could he even imagine the woman he had underestimated? The woman who was no longer broken but becoming something fiercer? I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. The plan wasn't just revenge. It was justice. It was the silent promise that the truth would come to light and Mark would have to answer for every lie. As days slipped by, I kept my composure perfectly in public, even as my mind raced. At work, I led meetings with confidence. Friends and colleagues saw no hint of the storm inside, but behind closed doors I was meticulous. I created timelines, pieced together conversations, and prepared a dossier that would leave no doubt. One afternoon, Jessica called out from the kitchen. Elaine, you have to see this. I found her holding an old photo album, the one from our parents' house, filled with memories. A picture slipped from the pages. Mark and me on our wedding day, smiling at the future. I touched the photo, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. This, I said quietly, is why I'm doing this. Not just for me, but for who I was and who I'm becoming. Jessica smiled, eyes bright. You'll get him back in a way he'll never forget. Just then my phone buzzed, a text from Lisa. Tonight we meet. Time to put the pieces together. I took a deep breath. The moment I had been waiting for was near. Was I ready to face what would come next? To stand firm as the walls closed in on Mark? The fire inside me burned steady and bright. I was no longer a woman broken by betrayal. I was a woman armed with truth and unshakable will. And the reckoning was about to begin. The night of the meeting arrived with a quiet intensity that felt like the calm before a storm. Lisa's apartment was small but filled with light, the perfect setting for what was to come, an intellectual strike against the man who had underestimated me. Jessica and Raj were already there when I arrived, maps, documents, and printouts spread across the coffee table like battle plans. Lisa looked up, her eyes sharp and focused. All right, she said, this is where we turn months of quiet preparation into action. I nodded, swallowing the lump of anticipation in my throat. Let's go through it again. Raj pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop, highlighting dates and transactions. Here's where Mark approved payments to Sarah's company under false pretenses. The amounts add up, significant sums siphoned off without proper authorization. Jessica chimed in, and here, she pointed to a folder labeled text messages, are screenshots of conversations where Mark blatantly lies to both of us. His arrogance is almost comical. I smirked despite myself. Does he really think he's the only one who can play this game? Lisa smiled wryly. He's about to find out he's the amateur. We devised a plan to confront Mark at the company's quarterly meeting, a stage where his fall would be public and undeniable. The timing was perfect. I was presenting a new project which gave me a legitimate reason to be in front of the board, and with the evidence ready, we could expose his deceit not just personally but professionally. The day of the meeting, I walked into the sleek conference room feeling a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. Mark was there, looking every bit the confident executive he wanted the world to see. Sarah was nowhere in sight, but I knew she was lurking in the background, a shadow in his otherwise polished life. The presentation began, and I spoke with the calm authority I was known for, outlining the new project's benefits, budget, and timeline. Yet beneath the surface, every word was a quiet challenge to Mark, an assertion that I was still in control. Midway through, Lisa and Raj took their places discreetly behind me, ready with a laptop hooked to the projector. When the moment was right, Lisa clicked through the files we'd gathered. Suddenly, the room filled with Mark's incriminating messages, financial irregularities, and photos that no one could ignore. Gasps rippled through the board members as the screen revealed the truth. Mark's face paled. His confident facade cracked, replaced by a flicker of panic. He opened his mouth to speak, but the room was deafeningly silent, his words swallowed by the weight of undeniable evidence. I glanced at him, my voice steady. Integrity matters in this company and in life. When you abuse trust, the consequences follow. Mark's shoulders slumped. Elaine, this isn't how it looks. I cut him off. No, Mark. This is exactly how it looks. The board chairman, a stern man named Douglas, leaned forward. Mark, these findings are serious. We'll be conducting a full investigation. I felt a surge of satisfaction, but kept my expression calm. Revenge was a slow burn, not a wildfire. Later in the elevator, Mark muttered bitterly, "You think you've won? This isn't over." I smiled thinly. It's only just begun. Outside, Jessica waited, arms crossed, her gaze fierce. How'd it go? I exhaled, better than I hoped. He didn't see it coming. Over the next few days, Mark's behavior grew erratic. I heard from Lisa that he'd been making frantic calls, trying to cover tracks and calm Sarah's nerves. One afternoon, as I left the office, I saw him standing by the parking garage, phone pressed to his ear, looking desperate. His usual arrogance was replaced with something I'd never seen before, fear. I whispered to myself, good. Let him feel it. Yet amidst the satisfaction, I found moments to laugh. At a lunch with Raj, I recounted Mark's futile attempts to spin the story to his colleagues. He actually told someone the whole thing was a misunderstanding, I said, shaking my head. Raj laughed. Does he think the whole company is that gullible? No, I replied. He just thinks he can charm his way out of everything. Jessica joined us, adding, watching him squirm is oddly entertaining. I raised my glass. To truth and to every gray hair earned the hard way. But beneath the humor, I was always thinking 2 steps ahead. This was chess, not checkers. The public exposure was only the first strike. The deeper legal battle was waiting, with stakes higher than just reputation. And I was ready. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and intimidating, but I walked in with a quiet certainty that I hadn't felt since this nightmare began. The smell of polished wood mingled with the low murmur of voices and the rustle of papers. This was the arena where Mark's fate would be decided, not by whispered rumors or office gossip, but by unassailable evidence and hard truths. Lisa sat beside me, her presence steady and reassuring. Jessica and Raj flanked us, forming a small fortress of support. Their quiet strength gave me the courage I needed to face the storm. The judge entered, bringing the room to a respectful hush. I found myself locking eyes with Mark across the room. His expression was a mix of anger, disbelief, and desperation, the arrogance that had once defined him reduced to a flicker of fear. It was a haunting sight, watching a man unravel piece by piece. The prosecutor began laying out the case with surgical precision, documents detailing the financial misconduct, emails proving Mark's lies, and witness testimonies that left no room for doubt. Every word was a nail in the coffin of Mark's carefully constructed facade. One by one, the pieces of Mark's deception unfolded. An accountant testified about unauthorized transfers to Sarah's company, payments disguised as legitimate expenses, siphoned off without any board approval. A former employee described secret late-night meetings, hushed conversations, and hush money passed under the table to keep people silent. The private investigator detailed photographic evidence showing Mark with Sarah in compromising situations, all aligned perfectly with the dates he claimed to be working late. Mark's defense faltered under the weight of the evidence. His lawyer tried desperately to poke holes in the prosecution's story, but the facts were airtight. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, feeling the room's attention settle on me like a spotlight. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady, filled with a mixture of pain and fierce determination. "Your Honor," I began, "this case is not just about broken trust or financial misconduct. It's about accountability, about the consequences of betrayal, of deception, of choosing selfish desires over responsibility." Mark had every opportunity to be honest, to choose integrity. Instead, he chose to lie, cheat, and steal, not just from me, but from everyone who trusted him. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. The weight of years of hurt hung in my words. I am here not only for myself, but for every person affected by his actions. I could see a flicker of regret cross Mark's face, but no apology came. His silence was louder than any confession. Lisa leaned over, whispering, "Well said." During cross-examination, I held my ground, answering every question with clarity and calm. The truth was on my side, and that made me unshakable. Every time Mark's lawyer tried to twist my words, I stayed firm, no faltering, no excuses. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored for statements. Mark avoided the cameras, his usual confident smile nowhere to be found. I caught a glimpse of him slipping into a black SUV, his face tight with anxiety. Jessica caught my eye and whispered, "He's running scared." Weeks later, the judge delivered the verdict. Mark was found guilty of embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. The court ordered restitution, asset seizures, and a suspension from his position pending further review. It was more than I had dared hope for. As the gavel struck, I felt a surge of vindication but also relief. Justice was not just personal, it was public, undeniable. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of shock and satisfaction. That evening, I met with Raj over dinner. The restaurant was quiet, a sharp contrast to the storm that had just passed. "It's over," I said, finally able to exhale. Raj smiled warmly. "Not quite. There's still the fallout, family reputation, the mess left behind. But you've won the hardest battle." I nodded, thinking about the journey. Mark's downfall was not just about money or status. It was about taking back control of my life, reclaiming the power he tried to steal from me. Lisa called later that night. "The media is all over this. Your story's inspiring people more than you know." I smiled tiredly. Good, maybe someone else will find the strength to fight. Yet even in victory, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Mark's world was collapsing, but so was ours. My family's peace, my career's momentum, and the trust I had once placed in the people around me. One afternoon, Jessica and I sat in the park watching children play under a pale sun. The world felt fragile and new all at once. "It feels like everything's changed," she said softly. "It has," I agreed. "But change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's the beginning of something stronger." She looked at me, searching. "What's next for you?" I smiled, a spark of hope lighting my eyes. Rebuilding from the ashes stronger. As I left the park, my phone buzzed. A message from Lisa. "You did what most wouldn't dare. Proud of you." The journey had transformed me, from betrayed wife to a woman who had fought and won. But questions lingered in the quiet corners of my mind. How would Mark handle this collapse? Would he face his mistakes or crumble completely? Only time would tell. Mark's world unraveled faster than I expected. The news spread like wildfire, headlines screaming about his fall from grace, the scandal that had shaken the company, and the betrayal that had shattered a family. The man who once commanded boardrooms now found himself the subject of whispered gossip and pointed fingers. I watched it all from a distance, the sharp contrast between us undeniable. Where I was rebuilding, strong and steady, Mark was collapsing, materially, socially, and mentally. He lost his job, of course. The suspension turned into termination, the severance package retracted. Bank accounts frozen, assets seized to repay what he'd stolen. The life he flaunted was crumbling brick by brick, but the real collapse was deeper. The media exposed every sordid detail. Friends turned their backs, wary of association. His family distanced themselves, unwilling to be dragged into the fallout. One night, Lisa and I sat watching the news, a report detailing Mark's latest court hearing. I could see the fatigue in Lisa's eyes. "Do you think he understands what he's lost?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "He's too proud to admit it. He's still spinning his lies, deceiving himself more than anyone." At a family gathering shortly after, I saw the tension firsthand. Mark's sister avoided eye contact, while his mother whispered apologies that felt hollow. The warmth they once shared was gone, replaced by cold distance. Yet despite it all, Mark refused to face reality. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he continued to deny the truth, blaming everyone but himself. His isolation grew, a prison of his own making. Meanwhile, I was moving forward. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I focused on my career, spearheading projects that brought me recognition and respect. The community center I had designed opened to rave reviews, a symbol of hope rising from ruin. Jessica and Lisa remained pillars of support, reminding me that strength often comes from those who stand beside us. One afternoon, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was no longer defined by betrayal but by resilience. I whispered, "This is who I am now." And that was the lasting truth. Months after the dust settled, life began to take on a new shape, one I had carved out with intention and quiet pride. I was no longer the woman shattered by betrayal. I was a woman reborn, stronger and clearer in purpose. One crisp morning, I received an unexpected call from the firm's new CEO. "Elaine, we've been watching your resilience, your leadership. We want you to head a new ethics and compliance department. Your experience, both professional and personal, is invaluable." The offer surprised me. It was an acknowledgement not just of my skills, but of the strength I had forged in fire. I accepted, seeing it as a chance to help others avoid the kind of pain I endured. At the inaugural meeting of the new department, I looked around the room, diverse faces, eager eyes. This was more than a job, it was a mission. I felt the weight and the promise of what we could achieve together. After the meeting, Jessica joined me for coffee. She smiled, eyes warm. "You've come so far, Elaine, proud doesn't even begin to cover it." I laughed softly. It wasn't easy, but every step was worth it. Lisa stopped by one afternoon with a stack of invitations to speak at conferences about corporate ethics and personal resilience. "People need to hear your story," she said. "It's not just about what happened to you, but how you rose above." Standing before audiences, sharing my journey, I found purpose in connection. I realized my pain had become a bridge for others to cross from despair to hope. At home, I kept a small framed photo on my desk, the wedding picture Jessica found months ago, worn at the edges but precious. It reminded me of who I was and who I had become. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat by the window, sipping tea, the city lights flickering to life. A text popped up on my phone from an unknown number. "You showed me the meaning of strength, thank you." I smiled, a warmth spreading through me. I knew the road ahead would have challenges. But I also knew I wasn't walking it alone, not anymore. The gray hairs Mark earned. They were badges of a battle he lost, a reminder of his folly. As for me, I embraced every strand of silver in my hair, each one a story of survival, of triumph, of a woman who refused to be broken. And in that, I found peace.